I'm watching you like a hawk. Do you know why? You can't even count to 9. You scare me.
Welcome to Film Fu, where the cuts are as clean as the kicks. I'm Shifu Payne, and welcome back to Monster Month, where we take a look at the experts of blood dripping themselves. But while we here in the West know vampires as the blood-sucking romantic creatures of darkness that we know of them as, other parts of the world have their own versions of vampires, and those versions are not quite as represented as perhaps more the Western version. I mean, it's only fair to give them their own time in the sun by taking a look at the first installment of a great horror martial film franchise.
Directed by Ricky Lau and released in 1985, Mr. Vampire can be described as a martial horror comedy. Generally, horror comedies can be kind of hit or miss, with the humour diffusing any tension or fright. But this film balances the two decently, knowing when to be humorous and when to have more of a serious tone.
And this tone perhaps wouldn't have been as well realised without one of the main figureheads at the head of this franchise, Sammo Hung.
Sammo Hung is an absolute veteran, acting, writing, directing, producing, and doing stunt work on so many films it's hard to count them all. A longtime friend of Jackie Chan, the two have worked and collaborated on multiple projects. It's fair to say that even if you don't recognise him, you recognise the films he's worked on. Ip Man 1 and 2, Kung Fu Hustle, Enter the Fat Dragon, Project A 1 and 2, and relevant to today, the Mr. Vampire series.
With that franchise beginning here as we take a look at this film's plot.
A mortuary owner, played by Chin Yin Lam, is taking care of the reburial of a Mr. Yam's father, when it's found that the body has not decomposed in any way. On inspection, it's found that Yam Sr. has succumbed to vampirism. The vampire escapes and proceeds to go on a killing spree, and spreading his vampirism to others, including the mortuary owner's apprentice, played by Ricky Hui. As the bodies pile up, tensions rise, as well as dealing with a ghost too. Master Gao, with the help of his other apprentice, played by Si Ho Chin, and the vampire's granddaughter, played by Moon Lee, all work to stop the spread of this evil before it's too late.
First, let's get this out of the way, as it is a part of the mechanics of this film. The vampires of this film and Eastern culture are not quite like the typical vampires we know.
While for the vampires of the West you would need garlic, a steak, and or silver, an Eastern vampire is very different. Known as a jianshi, or stiff corpse, instead of sucking blood from someone, they will instead take the ki or life force of a person. Much like a typical vampire, if you're killed by a jianshi, you become one. But a person can also change after death due to deeds committed in life, or if they take their own life, or through means of magical control or resurrection. But don't despair, for the jianshi has some weaknesses. They're terrified of their own reflection, for example. They can be harmed by the wood of a peach tree and or fire. Taoist talismans can immobilize them, sticky rice burns them, and holding one's breath stops them seeing you.
But how does this context affect the events and action of this film? Let's take a look and find out.
The scene we're looking at today takes place roughly halfway through the film, as Master Gao has been arrested by the incompetent police captain.
Yeah, no offense made, but you kind of have "tool" written on your forehead.
At the same time, the corpse of Mr. Yam is held at the station, quickly succumbing to vampirism itself. With Chin's character sneaking into the station to take care of Yam, Chin goes to place a talisman on Yam's head, but Yam is not overly fond of that idea, going ahead and overhead throwing Chin into a brick wall. Something supernatural must be going on for him to walk that off. Chin is able to flip behind Yam and place the talisman on him.
Oh, well, that certainly was easier than expected. Let's hope nothing comes along to... fuck. It's... oh. Fuck.
Captain Moron takes the talisman off the vampire, waking him back up, and for his trouble, nearly getting bitten in the joystick. Considering how earlier this guy was acting like a total perv with Yam's daughter, I'm going to say this is warranted. Unfortunately, this does not happen, but we do get a nice flipping fall into a table stunt as a consolation prize. Chin puts a bucket on Yam and sweeps him underfoot, giving time to regroup. Dude, your master is well versed in these things. You would know a gun is useless. From here, it becomes more of a struggle to fend off the advance of the vampire, vampire, and this is where we should cover this. You may have noticed this, but this is less a fight scene and more like a stunt show. I mean, it does make a certain amount of sense, seeing as how, last I checked, vampirism does not include a black belt. Don't think that I'm discrediting the stunt work here, however. Chin and Billy Lau as the captain are still pulling off some excellent stunts, along with Ha Huang, who plays the now vampired Mr. Yap. As the captain gets accidentally branded,
I'll allow it.
Chin continues to try and fight the vampire while the captain tries to get reinforcements. Nah, I'm just kidding, he's fleeing. Both Chin and the captain are cornered at the door, but Chin is able to slip away while the captain keeps the key sucker busy. Chin is able to slip another talisman onto Yam's head, which Captain Wei immediately knocks off.
I'm watching you like a hawk. Do you know why? You can't even count to 9. You scare me.
Wei is volunteered as tribute to keep the vampire busy while Master Gao is freed from his cell, and they work on a permanent solution. This little break in the tension as they all try to hold their breath serves as a nice moment of quiet tension. Generally, action scenes require some small break in the action to let the audience breathe slightly before the action continues. But as this is also a horror film, it has a dual role. While it does serve as quiet time from the action and breaks up said action so that the audience can readjust and not become bored of the movement, it also is able to keep that tension high as the urge to breathe is so natural that anyone is capable of gasping for air at any moment. So the danger is literally right in their face. Gao is freed and immediately fly kicks the vampire to the face. Not before the vampire is overhead thrown back by Chin and the two prepare to create a barrier for the monster. The vampire is blown back as Chin does a nice flip stunt and stabs the creature with a wooden sword. The body is set on fire as, at least this vampire is dealt with.
Let me tell you, it was even worse with Mr. Asparagus. As stated earlier, the action of this film is less martial arts and more outpace the monster, get pushed around by the monster until there's an opening to use an object. And while this may be more realistic, it's not necessarily great for a film. At least, not a martial arts film.
While I've not looked at the action scenes for the other films in this franchise yet at the time of making this video, I can't help but speculate that perhaps this was why Sammo Hung became more hands-on with the subsequent installments. While Hung has been a part of this franchise for a long time, I can't find definitive confirmation that he was a part of this film. If he was a producer for this film, he either went uncredited or was under another name. I don't know, it kind of tracks, however, that perhaps Hung was in some way connected to the first film, did not think the action was as good as it could have been, and decided to become more hands-on in the sequel.
Again, this is just speculation. But with that being said, in terms of this actual film, what are we left with?
Well, first of all, while the blending of tones works better here than in other films, there does feel like a watering down of the premise.
This is a film about a kung fu knowing mortician fighting off a vampire along with his apprentices, plus a ghost woman. This is a horror comedy, for God's sake. How is this not more exciting? Go big or go home. Really hyper-realize this kind of premise. You know, Stephen King this shit. Also, this is very important. If a ghost girl tries to get you to be her husband, don't fall for it. Worse still, do not get that ghost pregnant, because then you'll be having to deal with ghost child support, and believe me when I say, that is a scare. Thank you for watching this week's video, and in the comments let me know if you've seen this film and what you thought of it. Overall, like I said, I just felt as though it was kind of watered down. You know, like it didn't really utilize the premise to its fullest. You know, by the end of the film, when I was finished with it, I just couldn't help but think, was that it? You know, and really, for this sort of premise, that should not be how you feel by the end of the film, you know? But with that being said, again, thank you all for watching, everyone, and until next time, everyone, peace be with you.